Sweet.
How are you doing today? Happy Friday. You got a big weekend planned?
Sweet. No, I don't have a ton planned. It just, with active, it's just more of a 24/7 thing. Pick your spots here and there. Um, I didn't plan anything big this weekend. Stuff's hard to plan. You
Yeah,
know.
I feel that. Yeah, I know when you're running your own business, you kind of beholden to a lot more things. I think people don't necessarily appreciate it. So we'll go ahead and get started. We got a few. Holy shit! Look at that, Rando gang. Hey, thanks for those gifted subs. What up, Vroom? All right, so let's get started. Today, we are here with Bill Kirk, a good friend of mine. Bill is the CEO of Active Carry. I've known Bill for quite some time. Bill is my sponsor. Bill has been an integral part of my life and has pulled my ass out of the fire on numerous occasions. I am immensely grateful to the changes that he has made in my life, and I had a bad end to the year. It was terrible, and that kind of segued into an even worse start of the new year. And if not for Bill's intervention, not intervention, that's not quite the word I'm looking for, but if not for Bill's assistance, I definitely may still be, or may be still having issues. Obviously, my brain's not quite back. I'm reminded, of course, of the beginning of Empire Strikes Back when Han Solo saves Luke Skywalker a second time and says, "That's two you owe me, Junior," because Bill has had to listen to a lot of whining and a lot of self pity, and Bill's one of the only people that I not only respect immensely, but I'm actually terrified of as a man. He is quite an imposing figure. I'll never forget the first time I saw him in a meeting. I don't even think he knew that I saw him. This was this was months before we ever spoke. I was in and out of this club that both of us frequented, where drunks gather, and he was sitting in his spot in the top left, just looking like he wanted to snap somebody's neck. And I was really scared of him. I didn't know what his deal was, but I was like, that guy's really cool. And then, of course, a few months later, I started going back regularly, and finally got the courage to actually talk to him. And, he's a great guy. He's really helped me. I'm lucky to a lot of people that I met a lot of people at the Windsor Club. And Bill's definitely the number one guy that I met there that really helped me. I think I had a very large chunk of happiness in 2020 and late 2019, and I owe a lot of that to Bill. So, Bill, I really appreciate you coming on and talking with me today about this stuff. We got a lot of shit going on. We're going to talk about a lot of shit, of course. And so let's get into it. Bill, why don't you talk about yourself for a bit?
Well, first of all, that's quite an introduction, and I can appreciate that. There's a lot to unpack there, but really more than anything else, I think it's just as much of a reward for me to be there and understand that, look, you might get some confidence from a little bit of time, and I'm around, you're around a lot of jaded people because they may have like a lot of time or whatever, however you want to frame it, um, and they just don't want to take the time to, especially with somebody like yourself who has a career, who has, a lot of things going for them,
Mm-hmm.
and they don't want to, because you're not like, some frail little person that looks like, oh my God, you're somebody that has something going for you, that is a smart guy. You just get caught in a bad way. And so, like I said, that's a really intimidating factor for some of the people that are in that program. And as you found out, anybody can talk to me. I think when you I think when you were referencing me looking upset, I think it's because for quite a while, I would sit in the corner of this, the one area,
The upper
and
level.
the one corner there, and then I kind of, you know, you sort of develop um, a little bit of a soured sort of outlook sometimes, because you see like certain personalities starting to dominate. We've talked about this. They dominate meetings and it becomes like their show. And I'm like, this is not what this is about. This is, you know, like they say, it's about the new person that shows up. It's sampling, could be sampling this for the first time who really needs help. And when you start hearing the same people with the same story, talking about something that really doesn't have much to do with why everybody's there, there's an irritation that sort of sets in. And so that's why sometimes I just step away from, taking on responsibilities, because I'm like, look, if you're going to do this, then this has to be done, at least with some accordance to getting people better, not, a personal, you know, counseling program just for you. I didn't see your name outside the room saying like, this is your office, bro.
Right. And I find like there's a lot, and I've had a lot of struggles with getting involved in the program just because a lot of it didn't really resonate with me. The whole self-help program concept, and love and light happiness bullshit, like it's toxic positivity. It really is. Like it doesn't feel genuine. And one of the things I love about you, and why I think I was immediately drawn to you compared to a lot of the other people that I've encountered, is that you like immediately, as soon as I started talking to you, you immediately were like, dude, I've got a fuck ton of time. 90% of this shit is bullshit. Like, you could throw away a lot of this, but like you were like, it doesn't mean the whole thing's bullshit. And that kind of gave me a way. It kind of gave me a way to kind of throw away the cynicism that I had associated with the program for so long. Because I spent my childhood going to these meetings. My mother couldn't afford a babysitter. She had issues too, and she stayed in the program for over 20 years. But she did that because she did what she had to do. She would have to bring me there. So like, I had like a lot of bad memories just kind of sitting around listening to these stories from 10 years old. So I didn't want to repeat that, but it got to the point for me where it was like, I don't have a fucking choice. Like I can't keep going through this cycle. Something has to happen. And it's funny, the timing and just kind of the way everything worked. I don't want to say God did it, but something fucking happened where I met you at the exact moment that I needed to. And then again at the beginning of this year, just, we hadn't seriously talked in a long time. And I kind of kick myself because I feel like, man, over the last 8 months, if I would have just kept in regular contact with Bill, I feel like I probably wouldn't be as bad off as I got. But I can't dwell on the past. But as soon as I called you, I fucking called you. You just immediately answered. You were like, "What's up? Yeah, you're fucked. You might die. You better fucking stop feeling sorry for yourself. Just fucking call me. It's fine." And that kind of attitude where it's an understanding, but it's not like a pity party, is the exact thing that I find it just is really refreshing from a guy like you in the program.
Well, you know what? What's the bottom line? It's like there's a difference between being a skeptic and a cynic. You know, there's a big difference. And
Yeah.
so having a healthy bit of skepticism is fine. But see, you know, you having to unpack a bunch of layers of crap from seeing that as a kid, that's not easy to do, because again, you're already going to have an attitude about it. But when you're approaching it for yourself, that's the key, is that you're not there for anybody else. You're not there to entertain anyone. You're not there, if you want to be funny, it's great. It lightens things up, and that's good. But, for me, the reason why I told you like a lot of this stuff, because I could already tell what kind of person you were. You had a career, you had something going for yourself, and you just got in a bad way. And, very similar to myself, because I tried it years ago, but I wasn't doing it to really quit. I was doing it to get some people to shut up.
Yeah.
You know, I'll go
Yeah.
have my taster's choice moment. I learned my lesson. I'll do it better now. And that's the lie that you tell yourself, that you're going to manage yourself better somehow. And but it's still lurking there as like a coping mechanism. And that's where I felt you and I sort of connected, is that this is what we were using this for. It was a good time most of the time, and then when things got ugly, it still seemed like a good idea.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of where, and when you moved up north, like I was concerned, I was like, okay, because there are all these terms for this, in the program. Oh, he's doing a geographical and all this other stuff. And again, not to shit on the program because it's real, people actually do that.
Uh huh.
But I was a little concerned, but I'm like, this guy, if nothing else, he understands concepts. So at some point, if he does jump off, I felt like you'd be able to reel yourself back in, like you'd have enough self-awareness to be like, okay, none of this is going well. This is not what I had in mind when
I
I,
mean, not immediately. The problem,
no, it takes a minute. It takes a minute.
the
Trust
pro,
me, I've been there.
the
Because like
pro,
especially with what, like, it's just like after my first sort of go round with the rehab that I went to, you know, I came out and I was all nice, and it was 30 days of hanging out in like this mansion out in the valley and all this other stuff, and it was great.
Mhm.
And but even walking out of that place, I'm like, well, that was like a just a vacation, is what that was.
Yeah.
There were meals prepared for me. I could go hit the fridge whenever I wanted to. It was just like whatever. Just don't leave without, just don't do that, and you're fine. So I said, okay. So I learned how to operate there, and but there's still the lack of commitment because the next 4th of July I was by myself. I
Right.
was somewhere, and I just thought, this just seems like the right time. And then for another 3 months, a month and a half into it, I was back to the everyday,
Yeah.
the everyday having to get tuned up to face the world. And that was ugly, you know?
Yeah, and for me, rehabs have never really appealed to me. Like, I understand them, I know what they're all
Right.
about, but I'm always suspicious of people that like just go into a rehab once and they're like, I'm cured. And I'm always cynical, like, okay, but did you ever really have a problem? Because the rehab environment, to your point, isn't the real world at all. And I think the concept is to remove you to this from the stressors of the real world. But like, I've far surpassed the idea of drinking for like enjoyment or social pleasure in any way, shape, or
Yes.
form. It is like,
There's
okay, I hit this stressful point in my life, and boom, like I can't. Like I'll hit something that just makes me ruminate about like past shit I did wrong, or like how
Yeah.
I'm going to fuck up something. So it's like, well, I better drink to like calm this down. And then I inevitably do fuck the thing up that I was concerned about before I even fucking got involved in the first place. It's so terrible. And the people that don't have this issue, they don't understand like just how fucking ridiculous it is.
Right.
And I can only imagine how ridiculous it looks to people that don't have this issue. It must just seem stupid. I get it, but like it's legitimately terrible and horrible and sucks like in a major way. And this last time, the real issue with me was like I kept having these like baby relapses and nothing really bad was happening, and then I just fucking okay, well, better get back on the saddle, but like I wasn't doing anything to really work on myself. I was just kind of like,
Right.
okay, I'm done. And it's like, but in the back of my head, it's like, you ain't done. Shut the fuck up. And then it got to the point where it was like, okay, now you fucked up everything again. Now you have to do it. And it's so stupid that you have to get to this point before you're ready to really get back there. Hey, Tank, how's it going? Do you think there are okay? So we got some questions from the chat. Enter the room. One of the oldest members of the chat says, do you feel there are any safe drugs, or do they all lead down the same path of addiction and habitual use? I know Bill Bill never gets very upset, but he was disappointed when he found out I was smoking weed during my last go round. So I'll let you take that, Bill. What do you think?
Well, I mean, the only reason is just it's just harder to stay sober. But I mean, I know people that do that. I mean, I think I was probably irritated just because it was early days for you and you were already looking for something else to to do in that area. And that usually, with my experience talking to people and whatever, that usually leads you right back. If you had been sober for 3 years and smoked some weed because you wanted to or whatever, okay, fine. I get it.
Mm-hmm.
And but and then obviously you have the people in the program where that's just not even, you can't go and claim sobriety, you can't do this, you can't do that. So it put me in a weird position, trying to be your sponsor
Mm-hmm.
and try and navigate that water for you and try to give you the best advice that I could. Frankly, I know guys that work, that work the Chicago Mercantile Exchange that get high continuously and they still manage themselves. Now, I would say that that is the exception and not the rule.
Right.
Um, but I can't tell you what's safe. It really has more to do with the user. If you're using it to cope, if you're using it for something other than, like, hey, a little relief, like the person that has a couple, 3 beers when they get home from work.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, that person exists. That person who has command, who doesn't use alcohol to completely change reality for themselves, clearly they don't have a problem. So they know when to call it.
Right.
So I can't honestly say, are there any safe drugs? Well, I don't know, dude. If you blaze like two Super J's, and go for a spin and, get in an accident, am I supposed to say that, well, it was safe? I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just,
Yeah,
I don't know. There's just no comment for that really says.
and I think that to your point, it's probably more the person than the substance, because
Right.
alcohol, if you don't have an addiction issue, alcohol is safe too. If you go home and have a couple of beers to relax, then alcohol's safe for you too, as long as you're not driving immediately after. So it's more to do with the person and how they react to substances. And I think, just based on my experience, that if someone's regularly using anything, they have the propensity to fall into this hole in kind of any fashion, regardless
Yeah,
of what they're
your
using.
odds. Yeah, your odds just happen to go way up. Is
Right.
what happens.
I mean,
You know.
I've in like I encounter shit like this, and I got shit for this in a meeting one time talking about this. I like overindulge in everything. When I find something that will alter my fucking reality in any way, I will fucking start just pushing it to the max. I mean, I was chugging, you guys remember, I was chugging Red Bulls and shit like they were going out of style. Like
Yeah.
drinking way more, and I know it sounds silly, and this is why I got shit at the meeting. But like my point was that like this is a substance, although legal, and nobody seems to think it's a problem. It definitely kind of alters you in a way. And once I figure that out, then I immediately jump in and I'm fucking all about it. I'm drinking like way too much tea now. It's like
Right.
it's
Right.
everything. Like I overindulge in literally everything that I can get a little boost from. So like I have to
Right.
basically cut myself off from everything, which sucks. It's not great, but you do what you got to do.
Yeah, I mean, there are worse things to have a problem with. And I mean, you're not going to go through your life, problematic free. I mean, that's just unrealistic. But I mean, the whole thing about, alcohol or drug abuse is that at the end of the day, we're doing it to ourselves.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the guilt and the disgust comes from, post getting cleaned up and all that stuff. But like, you hit a certain threshold where, okay, am I going to be like this milk toast jagoff, or am I going to go and live the life that I was meant to lead, or live a life that I'm capable of, and seeing what's possible? And it's just like, it's like that story I told you a while back that I've told at meetings, where like there was a certain threshold. I had secured a little bit of funding for the company. I was stoked, and I was cleaning my bathroom at like 8 o'clock on a Saturday night. Find this catch-all thing. I look in there. There's $380 in there in cash. I have no idea how it got there. And seriously, I could not remember why that money was in there. And it was at the very bottom, hidden. I was hiding it from myself. And again, immediately when I saw the money, I was like, oh, not to, I had plenty of money in the bank, but I was looking at it, and my mind was already planning what I was going to do. It
Yeah.
was mapped out within 30 seconds. I was hearing music. I was talking to make believe girls, you know,
You
and
were
then
ready
like
to
it ended.
go.
Yeah, and then it ended. I looked at the money again, and I remembered that earlier in the day I was with my son and we were at the Apple store and he was picking out an iPad for his birthday, and I'm like, this will probably go a long way towards that.
Yeah.
And so I just put it away, finished doing what I was doing, sat down on the couch, and just felt like, okay, this was a big test,
Yeah.
and it just happened to, it just happened. It didn't, wasn't placated. I didn't get a phone call from some, some asshole buddy saying, let's go party. I didn't get any of that.
Yeah.
It was on my own, like I like things, lone wolfing stuff, and I shut it down. So
That fucking voice, dude. That voice has fucked me over so many
yeah,
goddamn times. That fucking that daydreamer, and it comes out of nowhere. That's the most frustrating part. And it's you. It's you, so you kind of trust it. And it's just like, you'll be fine. You're like, I'm sober. Everything's great. I got this. This is fucking going to be easy. No problem. And then all of a sudden, it's like you'll walk by a bar and you'll be like, I think I'll have a beer. And you're like, wait, what the fuck just happened? Like, I
yeah,
just had 2 weeks. Why did this just happen? I don't understand. And it's like, the main issue with that is like, you have to recognize it, and you have to kind of train yourself to understand that is not the normal voice that guides you through your day to day. There is like, and it's so fucked up, it's so sneaky that you treat it like that same voice. It is infuriating. And I get mad, like when I still encounter it. God, I mean, I hope that the more time you get, the less it comes.
yeah. I'm not going to promise you anything because I still go to the store and get excited. But you know what? That's why I started talking to you, because in my, you know, length of sobriety to this point, the reason why I started bringing up like the Carl Jung stuff, and the shadow and all that sort of discussion and analysis,
Mhm.
is because what happens when you, especially when you go along doing what you do and you have like a degree of success, like through my 20s and 30s.
Mhm.
That's all I knew how to do, was just go and execute, and it usually went exceedingly well. And I was so used to that, so that voice was my reward voice saying, all right, bro,
Yeah.
let's go do this.
Yeah.
You're entitled.
Yeah.
You're entitled to go, you know mow down 6 vodkas and start grabbing women and start
Yeah.
being, start
Getting
acting like a jerk,
getting in
you
trouble.
know?
We got
Right, exactly.
we've got a comment from Scotland, Tinkerbell. I've relapsed 4 times now. How in how long, Tink? The help in Scotland is next to non-existent. Yeah, it's we are kind of a pussified nation, but we've got a great support system in terms of this stuff. There's a lot of people in it that kind of suck. I think that's my main complaint about it. But like, if you concentrate hard enough and you really go back, like I did, eventually you can find a bill. I'm sure there's an international line that can guide you in the direction of a meeting. With COVID, it's a lot harder, but you might want to start with Zoom meetings. I know Bill's not a fan of them. Just me as like I'm trying to fucking get back on this. I've committed to 90 and 90, and I probably don't pay attention as much as I do in like the standard meetings, but it is what it is. I got 31 days today without a fucking drink or any other
Congratulations.
bad stuff that we won't go too much into detail, but Bill
Well,
knows.
that's a win though. Yeah, but see, the thing is, you just take that as a win,
Yeah.
you know? That's all you can do, because again, you're a gainfully employed individual. You've got a lot going. So there's only one way for you to take this at this stage, you
Hmm.
know? And like for your friend that's had multiple relapses, that's unfortunately part of the game. But I think the most important thing, like for me, I've mentioned my friend Carrie a bunch of times. He sort of appeared right when my original sponsor sort of disappeared. He had a heart attack and, moved and all this other stuff. And so I felt fairly confident about what I was doing by that time, like 6 months in, but I was starting to get develop that cynical approach. I was looking at the personalities and not what was being suggested by the program is it's not a good idea. At
Right.
the end of the day, like you have to accept something that simple. Is it this is not a good idea for you. You've demonstrated enough. If you haven't
And that's it.
noticed, if you haven't noticed, people aren't taking you seriously. People look at you in a weird way because they know you reek. You
Yeah.
probably haven't showered. You're trying to cover that up.
Yeah.
It's too much of a circus to manage yourself, and to think you're fooling other people is even more ridiculous. So, uh, yeah, it is hit and miss. Relapse is part of it, but you can't look at it like, well, I can always relapse, because depending on what you're up to, that could be real bad.
Yeah.
And finding an individual that you can relate to is always good. And so again, like with you, that's why I cut the crap and I gave you, a book on stoicism and some other things that, just sort of dug a little bit deeper
Mm-hmm.
than all of the typical little, taglines that were associated, because I could tell like you weren't buying any of that.
Right.
And most people that are, let's say of an above average intelligence are going to look, they're going to see right through all of the little taglines, because you have that degree of skepticism,
Mm-hmm.
and you're like, okay, I don't get this. But then, like I said, for me, I saw kind of what was behind the actual program itself. It's like, you're doing this to yourself for a reason. Why are you doing it?
Right. Yeah.
And when I focus, go ahead.
It just kind of gets to the point, and I know that we've got some things in the chat, and we're going to definitely get to them. It gets to the point where it just doesn't even fucking matter anymore. It's like,
Right.
it's like, okay, yeah, the meetings suck, but it's an hour a day, and you might have to socialize a bit. Would you rather do that or pass out face first on the concrete? Like like how bad? It's gonna get worse. If this is a problem, then it is going to get worse. And I've had it. I've gone through it.
Yeah.
Bill's gone through it. And there's people that grab it before it's too late, and good for them. And there's people that grab it halfway through. There's people that grab it at the very end. You go to the program and you're like, that guy's fucking got wet brain. It's like a tragedy. Or like that guy's like just dying, like as a result of his actions. But he wants to die sober. Yeah. So
the
like
level of damage is,
it's terrible.
and like I said, that's kind of where sometimes you have to look at the meetings, because I wasn't going there, you know like if I saw you, then it's great, or we went together, then it's like, okay, now we can sort of screw around a little bit,
Right.
or poke some fun at some funny stuff and whatever.
Talk about the hot
But
girls. The fucking
yeah,
the
we
TV
go,
stars that came in.
yeah,
Remember
one time.
that?
Yes. Oh, when you pointed that out, I got excited. Um,
Anyway, we're not going to say her name.
Especially from that show too. That's what was great about it. But no, but the thing is, like, I was doing it because I was like, okay, the way that I look at this is another discipline.
Right.
And as much as it sucks, it's like there's going to be a reward, because the level of clarity, I don't have to worry about, a seizure. I don't have to worry about withdrawals. I don't have to worry about things that are just not cool.
Right.
It's not funny anymore. And, there are just bigger things out there, I think, for most people. But again, to go back to what you're saying, sometimes the meetings, the best thing that you get out of it is that, Jesus, at least I'm not that guy.
Yeah. And,
I mean, that's a crap thing to kind of say, but you have to get something out of the meeting.
Yeah, it does work. Yeah.
So
we got some chat. We're still paying attention. We got Vroom saying, I've been using drugs and alcohol as some type of crutch since I was an adolescent. Yeah, I first got involved because I was kind of socially awkward. But Vroom's got a week and a half without the booze. We've been trying to stay sober together. Good job, Vroom. Keep it up. If you ever want to go to a Zoom meeting together, man, let me know. We can fucking hit one up. Tinkerbell said, I started going to classes at the end of 2019. I got a problem speaking to people I don't know and not so keen on the Zoom thing. You're doing so well, though. You look so much better. Yeah, I actually weighed myself at the gym yesterday, and I have I dropped 15 pounds through a variety of reasons, depression and various substances at the end of December. So I started at 235, and then I was at 221 when I started going to the gym, and now I'm down to 215, and I'm feeling really healthy. Like, I'm getting stronger again. It's great. And Tinkerbell says, I know I feel better when I'm not on it. It's getting past the first couple of weeks. I cave so easily. Yeah, that's the first part, at least for me, when I first started like really trying. Getting to a few weeks was really difficult. And then consistently, I would get to right around 2 weeks. And this is when I was just trying on my own. I would get to right around 2 weeks and I would drop off. I would rarely go over 2 weeks. I think, and I don't want to be, maybe it's not a problem. It's only a problem if it's only really a problem when you accept it's a problem and if it actually is. But I will say from personal experience, if you're trying now and you're having issues, you're probably just going to keep repeating yourself, like in terms of trying and failing and trying and failing. And that's like what Bill says, that's part of the process. You have to get to a point where it's like, I'm so fucking tired of trying to do this and not doing it. Like, something else has to work. And this is the thing, like, it does work. It sucks that it works because it can be such a hassle sometimes, but it really does work. Bill, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I think what you said is correct. The only thing I'll just say is like, you may never know, as long as the attempt is there, there's at least an awareness that you want to do something different with yourself. And that's a big one. And so depending on, what you're struggling with, again, like I said, you have to look at these programs, because even if you were able to go to meetings and things like that, if you're not there to get something out of it, and there's not like a real commitment, because even when you feel like you have a big commitment at the beginning because you got in trouble or something like that, or you embarrassed yourself badly, or you're in financial ruins, the second you get out of that is the test. The second you're back on your feet, and again, that goes back to like 2 weeks sober. Of course, you feel good physically again. You feel like, okay, I'm going to do it better this time.
Right.
Right. And then you're just back testing it again. And then what you find out is, wow, I really do enjoy this, but it's really bad for me too. And you just have to look at it like, this is just, I haven't given this a fair enough shot mentally to see what's possible.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, you're absolutely right. But it's never, it always has to be you, that's the most frustrating part. I've had so many people, like so many relationships and family members try and get me there. In fact, the first time I ever saw Bill was in a relationship that I shattered because she dragged me. We dated for like a month before I like kind of admitted to her that I had this issue. And she was like, I know how to solve it. I think you have a problem. Have you heard of this meeting? And I was just like, oh God. And I feigned stupidity. I'm like, no, tell me about it. She's like, I'm going to help you. I'm going to bring you. And she lived right down the street. And so I had made the plans to move near her. And then 2 weeks before I moved to Glendale, we broke up. So then I ended up living like a block and a half from my ex-girlfriend the entire time I was there, which was great. But she brought me there, and the first time I sat down, that was when I saw you. I don't think you saw me because I left early and shit. But I wasn't ready. And there's a lot of people that will try to help you, but it never works until you, for me and for everybody I've talked to, it's like you kind of just drag yourself in there, just defeated. Like, I'm so fucking tired of doing this. This is like so ridiculous at this point.
Yeah.
Tinkerbell says, I 100% have a problem. The drug and alcohol abuse is a sham. They're adamant that medication and acupuncture cures all. I had a sober 3 weeks and they discharged me. I'm sure the rest of Scotland has better resources. We live so far away from civilization. It's another battle. Yeah, the only thing I could recommend then is Zoom. I mean, it's better than trying on your own because especially early on, I mean, I can only call
Yeah.
Bill so many times a day. And I was getting to the point where I was like calling him 3 or 4 times. And I was like, okay, I've got to like shift and take some of this on myself instead of, and there's a few people in the chat that I was just calling repeatedly. I know I called Simon out of nowhere and he was like, is everything okay? Because I never have called Simon before. And I was like, yeah, I just need to talk to like somebody. Can you tell me about your problems? Um, and it's all on you. Like you've got to kind of just fucking do it. It sucks, I know, but it's better than trying to do it on your own.
Well, one of the best phone calls I got from you, early days when we first started kind of talking on the phone, and you were working down in Orange County,
Mm-hmm.
and you called me and told me that you wanted to go have lunch at Hooters,
Nice.
and I was like, I don't know about that, and you're like, well, it's the only place around here.
Yeah, that sounds like me.
And I'm like, okay, so you're in Orange County and you're trying to tell me that Hooters is the only place that's serving food, really?
In my defense, it was the closest. It wasn't the only one. I ended
Right.
up going to that Hooters a couple of times and did not drink, but it was difficult. That was kind of stupid of me to put myself through. We've got to,
Well,
dude.
I
You've
mean,
got to come up here. We've got this way cooler restaurant. It's like Hooters. It's called Twin Peaks, but it's like the food is way better. Uh,
okay.
but there is alcohol
What?
there. But yeah, it's fun. The
Twin
girls,
Peaks.
oh my god, they're stacked. Anyway, so yeah. Anyway, I remember the first time I called you from that job, I wanted to fucking throttle like my coworker like on the first day
Oh,
I was
everybody.
there.
Yeah, everybody was on the chopping block, and and then like you were so happy like when they started letting you work remotely. I'm like, oh, well, that's good.
Yeah,
Um, and yeah, because when you're a contract, anybody who contracts from a technical standpoint sort of gets it
yeah.
that the employees don't exactly welcome you in. Uh, there's usually some territorial features going along with that,
Yeah,
so
yeah. Well, I know there was concern, but it's they wanted to extend my contract, and I was like, "There's no fucking way I'm going to keep driving," because I was in Glendale, driving to Irvine and back every day. I don't care how much you're
yeah,
paying me. Like during
yeah,
commute times, like I'm basically adding 3 hours to my day every day. Like
right,
it was
nothing.
driving me nuts. And then they put me at USC. They put me like they had owned a building like right in front of USC. They're like, you got to come here 2 days a week, but there was nobody there. So like I did it for 2 weeks, and I was like, is anybody even here to like watch me? So I just stopped going there, and like they never knew. I don't know. The life of doing contracts is fine. Um, so Tinkerbell says, I just need to be a bit stronger when I go to cave. And I think that's a kind of a fallacy that like we all kind of go through. That's we're talking to ourselves in early days and we're like, well, next time I'll just have more willpower. But you got to recognize yourself that you need help, I think. If this is a significant issue in your life, I think that's key.
Yeah, there's no substitute for your own mental commitment, because again, if early on you can't keep trying to test yourself because you haven't built up, and especially as we've discussed right now, you don't have in-person meetings. It's harder to deal with people and find somebody, because this requires layers of redundancy.
Yeah.
This requires, okay, oh, here's a book. Okay, well, that probably is not going to cut it when I'm irritated. Talking to somebody or going to a meeting will. It requires certain layers that you have to have some go-tos when you're feeling like it's time to cope, or you've, made up a reason in your mind, most likely, that you need to cope.
Mm-hmm.
And that is what it takes. And again, it's not to take away from the struggle, because it's really easy to look back and just say, oh, I'll just do this. That's not how it works, dude. That's not
Yeah.
how it works. It does work with layers of redundancy. It works with some trial and error, and
Yeah.
it does work with finding somebody who gets it, who might be a little bit further along in the game than you.
Yeah. That's true, man. It's very true. It's just fucking rough. It's, I'm feeling a lot better now that I got here, but I'm still scared shitless. That's why I'm like trying to talk to you regularly and then doing the Zoom meetings every day. And then of course I got my personal therapy session every week. It's like, it's a lot of
Right.
work just to fucking maintain some sense of normalcy, especially like during this, man. This was like really fucking getting to me. All this isolation and shit. It was really fucking driving me bonkers. And frankly, I don't think I'd have been better off if I'd stayed down there, to be honest. It doesn't seem that much different as far as my mental state goes. I wasn't really hanging out with too many people after everything got shut down anyway. And I was already kind of on a bad road. So, I mean, I'm happy to be up in the cold. I fucking did stand up for the first time in 16 years a couple of nights ago, and having like cleansed my body of all drugs. It was the first time I've ever done stand up completely sober. It was nuts for me. It was nuts because back in the day, I used to do it pretty regularly. And then like right around that same time, like my drinking started to skyrocket and my job took over and I just didn't have any extra time. And I was like, okay, I got to let this go. But something's been nagging at me. I've been bitching about this fucking existential midlife crisis that I've been going through for the past, 5 years now, I guess. And finally, that's in September, I was bored out of my fucking mind. I just started writing jokes again like the old days. And then I signed up for a few things to be notified when things opened up. And just kind of out of the blue at the beginning of the week, they're like, hey, we're opening back up in Tacoma. It's a little bit of a drive. It's not too bad. And I was like, I'm going. I don't care. I'm going. And I got up there, and it went way better than my first open mic. Like, I actually got some pretty decent laughs. And it gives me something to do every Wednesday now, which is good. Like, get me out of the fucking house, get talking to people again, and meeting some new people. There's a bar there, so it's not the best, but, it's fine. It's not too bad. Thanks for stopping by,
Yeah.
Tink. I appreciate it. But, I mean, it's just fun. Like, I miss that. And that's like a high, when you get off stage doing that, like I was shaking. I was like, oh, my God, I have missed this so much. I've missed, like, getting laughs like this. And I think that's part of the process, too. You can't just sit and feel sorry for yourself. You can't just sit and be like, stay sober, stay sober, stay sober, stay sober. You've got to find some semblance of a life outside of the box that you were so used to kind of putting yourself in.
Yeah, I think that's, of course. I mean, finding, an event or anything, or, like the activities, like I say, you just start to discover things that you enjoyed that didn't require getting hammered, you
Right.
know? And that's really what it boils down to is, you know, whether it's, the getting back to working out, getting back to, um, like in your case, rediscovering a creative aspect of you that you sort of buried for a while. That's a big one. I mean, to me, that's one of the, just like, when I was putting all this stuff together and putting active carry together, and then realizing how powerful my phone was, I was like, oh, okay, this is interesting. And
Right.
so I started to figure out, what was possible. And that's usually, when I'm on point and on, my game, that's when I look at things, no matter how abstract they might be, I try to figure out, okay, what's the application here? What's possible? And I think, like you said, you discovered, hey, well, I used to do this. This is fun. And then you got your ass out in front of people on top of it, which is amazing.
Yeah. Abstractions are a big part of what you like to discuss. I noticed that you return to kind of the concept of finding the abstractions within a program and just kind of not only that, but finding kind of a new way of looking at everything in life. And it's almost like a cognitive retraining from what I've gotten from it, what we've spoken about in the past. At first, I was so fucking lost. I didn't know what the hell you were talking about. If I can be completely honest, my
Right.
brain was so fucking gone. Like this was kind of a recovery, but God, when I fucking first came into Windsor, I could not function at all. It was really bad, and you know, uh, you speaking about that, I don't know if you want to talk about that anymore. I think it's beneficial. I can't even really put it into words as well as you can, but it definitely makes a lot of sense to me.
Well, I mean, as far as the abstracts go, you know, if you can actually understand what they are, like the simplest suggestions I find are sometimes the best to really explore. You know, like when you go through the book or when you're reading the Stoic stuff, you know, the philosophical writings, you know, it's all about finding something simple that works, okay? And you know, refraining from drinking, we've created that issue. You know, whether it's a mental, and then for I think both of us, it became a mental and physical issue to where you know I can't physically get through a day without passing out or whatever. But you know, as far as the abstracts go, I just looked at it like, okay, here's all the sayings, here's all of the ballyhoo associated with the program,
Hmm.
and what a lot of people just tell you that you have to accept.
Right.
Well, I just assume open the book to a random part of it and find one piece of something that I think is meaningful. You know what I mean? It's just like that's why I gave you that book, because I felt like at any point I could open that up and I could find something that not only made sense, but also had some small application to it. If that, not to get overly deep and technical with it, but that's to me, that's what keeps you on point as far as like, what am I looking to get out of my life?
Right.
Okay. If I'm not just going and, clocking in somewhere where I don't give a shit and I can't wait to get off work so I can go get hammered,
Right.
um, and feel bad for myself and wallow in lethargy and all of those other things. To me, it's like, look, dig a little deeper, get into something that means something to you. On its own, in your own mind, find an application for it and go do it and see what happens. You
Yeah.
know, I think that's the key to really exercising your brain in general, you know, is taking a look at a plan that somebody else did. Well, okay, this is how they laid it out. This looks pretty good. I'm not going to dismiss it, but there are some things, maybe I'll tweak it a little bit, maybe I'll do this or maybe I'll do that, get my own results, see if, you know, this works for me or not, because most people aren't, you know, they aren't looking for that. They want the cookie cutter, they want the easy approach. Just like, it's easy to go get a big bottle of, cheap ass stuff and get hammered for $15. Well, when you start steering away from that, you need to develop something stronger than that, just being a person of your urges,
Right. Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, man. I'm right there with you. And it's hard though. It's hard at first,
Yeah.
especially when you spend so much time kind of wrapped up in in this fucking bubble. It's
Right.
weird. It's almost like reality almost seems like a drug because you've spent so much time in this like haze that like the colors start popping and you start paying attention in conversations more and you start becoming more engaged in general and it just feels great. It's so frustrating to fall back down, but there is if there's one good thing about it is that once you get out of it, you appreciate the life again. And that's it. I mean, we don't have to go in circles around this. We got plenty of shit to talk about. Let's offend some people maybe. So you run Active Carry, and you basically with Active Carry you supply medical equipment, but it's like heavy duty medical equipment. Some of your customers are in military, some of your customers are in law enforcement. Your marketing sometimes seems like it's more geared to people that have a need for kind of more heavy duty gear, right? I mean, your shit isn't cheap, but it's
No.
very good quality. I've got a bag myself, and fucking thing is like indestructible. I carry all my vape supplies in it, And but you've encountered some issues with your company recently. Do you want to speak to that?
Well, I think anybody, as you know, I'm very friendly to the 2A community,
Mm-hmm.
and
Well, you'd have to
you
be,
know,
right? To for
no,
what?
not really. I mean, I think no, because there's a couple of other companies. The big players stay away from it,
Uh huh.
um, for political reasons and so on. But to me, it was just sort of being ignored. These people were giving, or they're trying to sell, you know, a lot of these folks can put these things together themselves, but it can be a pain, and sometimes they don't know exactly what's the most effective for certain types of injuries or whatever, whether it's a GSW or it's a camping, you know, gash that you got or something in the outdoors. But no, I mean, that's the thing is that, the platforms are, um, they're outsourced overseas. If you even just look at, um, Instagram with some of the posts and hashtags that you put up there, it tells you right out of the gates that in Europe, there are new guidelines and things like that. So, but the real challenge for me is that, you know, these things aren't really being looked at by like a serious person. It's
Right.
either they're just looking at images and making judgments based off that because they keep sending me, as you've seen, I've posted about it. Like they keep telling me that I sell like firearms and knives and guns, and I don't sell any of those things. All of the contents of the kits are all laid out right underneath the product. It's very friendly to the mobile user. You just scroll.
Yeah.
And so, but using compelling images, that's the fine line, is that using compelling images show up.
Yeah. Marketing.
You
It's like
know, the
marketing 101.
yeah, exactly. Well, not only is it, marketing for what people are looking at, but rich images, using reds and other things like that. Instagram likes those. They
Right.
like the up close. They like a person smiling. They like a face looking right at the camera. They like all that stuff. So trying to find the appropriate mix, I was doing that at the beginning. Um, when I first got off, I said, okay, maybe we'll limit, um, the imagery to outdoors and just camping. But the REI crowd just doesn't get it.
Right.
You know what I mean? They just don't understand like that, how important this is until it actually happens to them.
Right.
And so as far as, um, a lot of these people that aren't like real professionals, hunters really,
Mm-hmm.
they don't know how to do any of that stuff because they just don't think bad's gonna happen to them because they bought their $300 boots, they bought their $400 jacket, and they got some paracord and they think they're ready for the outdoors. And so anyway, but yeah, it's just one of those things, and I've just called it as it is. It's just I'm 2A adjacent.
Yeah. So
So go ahead.
do you get flagged when you try to put this stuff up immediately or when you start using certain hashtags? Or is it just
Well, the
obvious like
hashtag, I think I've been put into a, like, what they're calling a shadow ban situation since I'm associated and I repost people going through, firearms renditions or things like that.
mm-hmm.
We're all now into this little cocoon of terror, which means they're going to stifle your growth.
Right.
It means that your reach, and I'll share with you some of the statistics that I get when I look at the insights from posts. I started noticing this. That's why I started with the memes,
Yeah.
and because I needed to get the brand, I needed to make some people laugh,
Mm-hmm.
get the logo out there, and see if I could break through some thresholds to get people to visit the profile to see what I was about.
Right.
And so it was working quite well for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And then they got sick of me. I think they caught on to what I was doing
Mm-hmm. And
because
they
I was playing
throttled
the
those.
algorithm. Yeah, I was playing the algorithm with the meme and then slipping in one still image and then hammering it later on with, uh, some action, somebody's, reel of them at the range. And so all of a sudden that was like opening up floodgates where some of the posts were getting astounding spread. They were hitting like, you know, 4,000 people. For me, that was a lot. 4,000 people, but 40% of them were not following me.
That's
That's
good.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That's what you want like every time. And
Uh-huh.
so, but they won't let you have that. No matter how no matter how compelling the images are, even if it's a repost of a customer who bought my stuff, which is essentially the best thing that I can do,
Mm-hmm.
is somebody who's bought the kit. So if you look through the reposts, those were quite good. Those are the best. But even those have been throttled to the point where, like, if I tag a product, I mean, it goes nowhere. And I'm lucky if I break 1 or 2%.
That's frustrating. And there's nothing you can do about it because
No,
they don't
they don't talk to
they
you,
don't
dude.
talk
I don't
about
know.
it.
No, they don't help anyone, dude. They just either pull the plug
Mm-hmm.
or do what they're doing to me.
And you have no insight. I mean, obviously, this isn't an automated action. It seems like it got to the point where the profile was flagged for specific hashtags probably being repeated, and then at some point somebody had to review it. But you have no insight into the person that reviewed it. You have no insight into their political affiliations. Obviously, it's incorrect. You're not selling weapons. You're not selling ammunition, anything. But because typically speaking, your customers are associated with groups that would legally use weapons, that they would use it either to defend the country or law enforcement. That some person or some group of people, again, whose political affiliation you have no insight into, can simply say throttle them back and reduce their engagement levels. They can flip a switch, reduce their visibility.
Right.
And there's no appeal process. And going into
No.
the specific products that just get rejected, is there an
Right.
appeal process? Can you say, hey, this is incorrect, you guys are wrong, this has nothing to do with what you're saying it has to do with?
I think if you you should help yourself to some of the posts. I mean, it's just like I started split screening, like, hey, tag your products and get the post, and then right on top of it, the on top of the email, 2 minutes later, there's your items were rejected. So it's like, okay, this is how dumb it is. This is how I know this can't be like a real person making these decisions. Like one of my kits, the Ranger Light,
Mm-hmm.
which is just has a few less items than the full Ranger. Um, I wanted something kind of at the middle of the road price wise with discounts, could get somebody there, get them a kit with a headlamp and some other hardware. But long story short, the Ranger Light is okay.
Mm-hmm.
The regular Ranger is not.
So you don't think that a person is specifically fucking with you? You think that there's some kind of AI algorithm that's not really
I
getting
think
what
I
you're
think
doing?
I think it has to do because I've changed the images
Mm-hmm.
and I've submitted appeals and I get the same responses back and it even looks like they've tweaked it. So they're sitting there and telling me, "Oh, you can't, sell first aid products." And I'm like, "Dude, there are two other brands that my two biggest competitors,
Mm-hmm.
but they're monoliths. They're also associated. They're very close. I think one's really a front for the other,
Mm-hmm.
but they, because they designed a brand that was supposed to be more appealing than their actual name. So fine. But like I said, they have open their marketplaces are wide open. They're running ads and selling things. And
Mm-hmm.
so I'm like, I've even told them, I'm like, look, you seem to think this is okay. This is the same. Look at the contents.
Yeah.
They're very similar. And I just get crickets. And so what I've been doing is designing new products with new names, creating SKUs, and
Mm-hmm.
seeing if I can get them to pass. And so, like
Now,
the last one I did. Go ahead.
Now, because I know just from some companies that I've worked for in the past, there is AI systems that they're developing to recognize certain objects. With the company that I was working for, we were tasked with creating AI, and this was like back in 2012, to recognize porn.
Right.
Like dicks and shit. Like legitimately, we wrote a program that could recognize dicks to make sure
Right.
that like dick images weren't getting put through. So I mean, theoretically, at some point that could have been adjusted to recognize pictures of firearms as well. Do you think that
Well, I
maybe
think
that has
that's
something to do with it? Do you have any firearms at all, like in the imagery for these products?
well, yeah. I mean, like at the top of it, but like when you go to the product itself, there's none of that. So, like I said, but here's the thing: the lack of consistency is the real issue because they allow. This is what's astonishing. Again, a kit that they've deemed okay is called the Bortac trauma kit.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and so that says it's trauma kit. It's made for something really bad,
Right.
which apparently they're against, is what they tell me.
Uh-huh.
But the picture that I have for it that turns up, the product image, there's a
Uh-huh.
woman with a gun in her hand.
Hmm. Interesting.
So I mean,
Yeah, and I mean, in
again,
video game advertisements, we're constantly seeing video game advertisements for those stupid mobile games, and there's like pictures of guns all over. So I guess
right?
it has to be more
Still,
sinister than that. It's probably related to the hashtags more
well,
so than
I
the
think it's
images.
hashtags. I think it's hashtags. I think it's a combo platter. I think because, and again, this, it sounds like, mildly conspiratorial, but you and I touched on this a little bit about, just sort of what's in the air. Is it in business? There's a certain attitude that's sort of it didn't exist here. Let's say 30, 40 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and just the closing of the door behind you, and like we talked about it, like Samsung and Apple, they like each other. They might sue each other for show
Mm-hmm.
and try and do some things, but they own the whole market. They don't give two shits, and that's why they sue anybody who comes up with something good
Mm-hmm.
because it gets them in a holding pattern, and then they'll figure out either we'll do this ourselves, or we'll bankrupt the other party, or we'll buy them.
Right.
Okay, so I'm up against two players in particular, and I know some of the people that run those companies from past experience,
Mm-hmm.
and they are not cool. They are not good people.
Yeah.
And rather than looking at competition and saying, wow, maybe we need to up our game a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
they're like, no, we need to rat them out because there's guns in those. We can talk to the platform. We spend hundreds of thousands of dollars a year on these platforms. Part of our return is weeding out competition.
Right.
I mean, that's an ugly thing to say, and it sounds like bitter, but it's common practice. So I mean, it's not a conspiracy if you're accurate about it.
Into the room says my kind of AI, the dick searching AI. Gotcha, Vroom. If they can
Yeah,
recognize if they can recognize faces, they can recognize firearm related pictures. Yeah, definitely. And then he asks, "Do you ever have Google Photos sort your porn for you? It's fucking creepy." I don't like photo porn. I actually quit porn recently too. I talked about this. I think it's also it's fucking with our brains. So I cut that off as well. But yeah, I don't know. Going back, we have no fucking idea who's pulling these strings, but they're definitely not our friends. Vroom says, I am
No.
addicted to porn. I need help. You just got to stop looking at it, man. What you got to
Right.
get
Yeah.
is a little, you just got to get yourself a little friend there and,
Yeah.
take it out on her, right?
Yeah. We'll put some special gloves on that don't comply with the phone, so that you can't type anything in.
Yeah, just wear the special gloves. You can't use your phone at all. Or just go back to the Nokia, right? Get yourself
Right.
an old Nokia that you can't look at porn on. There you go.
Yeah,
Unless
get the
you're
flip
breaking rule number 1 and looking at porn on your computer. But Vroom knows better. That's a
Right.
no-no.
Yeah.
Mm.
But anyway, so yeah, there's always going to be a challenge, and I kind of knew that going into this.
Mm-hmm.
But part of the whole deal was, there was no style to any of these brands. There's
Uh-huh.
nothing,
Uh-huh.
and I think that's what started to get people's attention, and I did it on purpose, and I made it look cool to be prepared, not to be a prepper,
Mm-hmm.
but to have an idea of what to do when things don't, go particularly well. And I think that's, there's no argument, there's no real argument there. It's just a matter of, you know, how much does your leg mean to you? You know,
Right.
how much does somebody you care about mean to you? Um, Especially with a lot of the turbulence that's even out in, you know, general urban settings, not even going into bad environments or sketchy environments.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it's a rough time to be around. Uh, we're kind of living at, I think, a crossroads in at least American history, if not human history. There definitely seems to be a seismic shift um, in society in terms of what's acceptable and what's not. And there are so many morons that seem to kind of be on the wrong side of this, that
yeah,
just kind of fundamentally want to take away our freedom in the name of the greater good, or in the name of safety, or in the name of political correctness. That just, it seems like a bad move. And what a lot of these people don't understand is, as soon as you start letting them stamp on some rights, they're going to stamp on all rights. A lot of these people, a lot of these fucking couch pundits didn't get better than a C in
yeah,
fucking history. It's so shocking to me. A lot of these quote unquote socialists all came from like super upper class families where they never had to worry about money. So they don't understand the value in actually earning a living and actually starting from nothing and fucking developing something on your own, developing a skill set on your own, even without a
right.
college education. Like in my case, I know you went to college, didn't you, Bill?
I did.
Yeah. So Bill's smarter than me. Fuckface.
Well,
Whatever.
you know what? Here's the thing: is that the lack of respect for a skill set in general. Again, that's the dismissiveness. It's the dismissiveness of a cynic. When you get so cynical, that's the next step, right? Is you just dismiss everything
Uh huh.
as not being important. That doesn't mean anything, and you become this purveyor
Mm-hmm.
of nothing, just
Right.
your own stupidity. And
Right.
so, like I said, it's really weird. And uh, you know what? Sometimes you hate being right. You
Mm-hmm.
really hate, being right. But there's just some things, and I told you this. This is before you and I engaged. Um, a guy asked me outside of you know, one of the meetings at Windsor, and it was totally random. He was asking me because this came up with you and I, because he says, "Yeah, I was reading all this. He's a bright man, but he's high like all the time."
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, "Yeah, I've been reading all this, this postmodernist stuff and the nihilism. Where does it go?" And I told him, I said, "It goes nowhere, dude. That's the problem." I
Mm-hmm.
said, "It goes nowhere."
Mm-hmm.
And he said, "Well, what do you think society's biggest problem is?"
Yeah.
And right out of the gates, I remember the question and where we were exactly. And I just said the normalization of hypocrisy.
Yeah.
That on its own
Mm-hmm.
is unreal to me because if you asked a person, they can run their mouth all they want on social media. But if you ask them point blank, do you like associating with people that say one thing and do the opposite?
No.
Do you like that? Would you get involved with people who that was their practice, that was their game?
Yeah.
They'd say absolutely not.
Right.
And so, but again, culture, as they say, is downstream from politics. And so what you're seeing is so much of this being just televised right in your face, and it's so insulting that again, over time, then it's like, well, why not me? Why can't I just say one thing and do another,
Right.
and have it be accepted and have it be okay?
Mm-hmm.
Because that's the norm. Well, nothing is ever going to get done if that's the case.
Right.
And you don't trust anybody. And
Always shitting on nihilism, though, Bill. You're such a nihilism hater. Now, you did try to get me into Stoicism for quite some time. And I can
well, look,
understand its benefits. But, I mean, still, isn't it creating like an artificial sense of purpose? I mean, that's kind of how I feel about it. And I respect most of it. But I think the real truth
okay,
is that
so
there is no meaning unless we actively try to create our own meaning, which I guess would be more in line with Stoicism, correct?
right. Well, I mean, here's the thing. Okay, if you're going to have a personal philosophy or policy, I'm not sure, you can go the way it's like I told you before. That's an approach, but we all know Nietzsche lost his mind at the end, so everything coming out of his mouth was gibberish anyway.
I know, but I have mad respect for him anyway.
No, so do I. Absolutely. Dude, completely. I use the term Ubermensch all the time to describe an idiot in my family, and because he actually is. It's amazing. But uh, like I said, as far as like a personal policy go, I just find that I have a better time, you know, figuring out where my time is best invested.
Mm-hmm.
And I find the less I try to pull fast ones, the less I'm scheming, the less I'm doing that, the less overall concern I have about things in general.
Okay.
And again, it's a philosophies and Stoics and nihilism and all that stuff. Those are reference points. You and I could talk about this stuff for hours,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a good, healthy exercise in general.
Yeah.
You know, so why not? I'm willing to have that discussion. If you're just gonna take dumps and then not have anything to say after that and just expect me to take it, I'm not gonna go for that.
No, no, I'm not. I'm not taking dumps.
No, no, no. I'm
No.
not saying you are. I'm
Oh, okay.
saying I'm saying with the general person.
Yeah.
Look, I know that I can escalate this conversation with you,
Uh huh.
and so we can explore, and you're going to make some points that I'm going to have to think about for a minute. So that's good engagement, and it helps you develop an approach that works.
And your own approach, as opposed to
Right.
obviously just repeating something that you heard and taking it as your own, which I think is a huge problem with people in general on both sides of the political spectrum. They just get like my mother. Oh my God, they just get like fed these lines from like television or Twitter,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
there's no critical thinking involved. It's just the regurgitation of information. It's like I can remember that, and that'll make me sound smart to just repeat that. But it's like that's you're not engaging at all in that process. So therefore, you have no real like intellectual dog in this fight, regardless of what you're repeating. Like all you are is just like a pawn. You're not helping the situation at all.
Right.
You're just there. I mean, it doesn't matter if you're here or not at that point.
Right. No, I mean, and again, it's about developing an approach. It's about developing a way to go about things because at some point you're going to have to do something. Typically,
Mm-hmm.
um, unlike maybe some other folks that's why they are the way they are is that they don't know any better. But I mean, I've been on the riding high on the hog at times, and I've been in some weird situations that I put myself in,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of it had to do with that kind of approach that sort of creeps in because it's really easy for a nihilist approach to set in when you're bathing yourself in kettle one, you know?
Yeah.
It's
And
really easy to do that.
mm-hmm.
And it's
Mm-hmm.
easy to stay in that because that's really where you end up
Yeah.
is, you know, a drunken buffoon, you're looking for something intelligent to say, but you can't even put it together. And it just gets jacked up. That's why, like, at the end of like that first season of True Detective,
Mm-hmm.
you know, McConaughey was great in that because like he basically when I was in my, 20s, these were a lot of the thoughts that I had
Mm-hmm.
personally.
Mm-hmm.
Is that, they're deep and I'm not going to get into like the minutia of it, but I'll just say this, the flat circle,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And for me, I realized that I had a choice. My dad had a problem with drinking, and he was very different from me in the fact like how it affected him.
Mm-hmm.
I just like to party and have a good time and go screw around,
Mm-hmm.
and make fun of people or whatever. He was mean,
Yeah.
and um, that was a different type of individual there. But again, I could have just relived the same thing and people would have been perfectly fine with me doing that. They
Mm-hmm.
would have said, well, he sort of, given what's happened to him over the course of his lifetime and whatever, they would have been okay. Yeah, he's going to be drunk most of the time, whatever. He gets a pass sometimes, as long as he's not too much of a dick,
Yeah.
you know? And so I decided that that was going to be it. And that's part of, I feel like my dad, if he were around, would be proud of me,
Mm-hmm.
in general.
Hi,
So,
Jen.
like, yeah,
Sorry, saying
that
hi
on
to the
its own
chat.
is good enough for me.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. I mean, I don't know your father's trajectory in all this. I mean, I definitely started out more like the partying drunk, but you know, definitely mid to late 20s, it shifted dramatically, and it brought me to an extremely dark place. And I
Yeah.
lashed out on loved ones, people I didn't even know, crazy homeless people on the fucking street. I don't know how many homeless people I yelled at in San Francisco. At this point, I can't even remember. Just like mad at the world. Just like really, you know, but, and not to get too introspective and fucking, hoity toity, I realized that I was really just mad at myself, because I had all these issues. And it's fucking tough. It's tough. Wish I could have met your dad. Probably would have had some fun. Maybe not.
He was a funny guy. I
Uh
mean,
huh.
he was one of those people that was just way smarter than people, sort of gave him credit for. And I'm not just saying that because he's my dad.
Mm hmm.
That's part of where I got, a bit of I had an eidetic memory. I'm 47 now, so it's starting to deteriorate. But um, he had the same type of thing, and he just was on certain things, and his approach to things. He's the one that motivated me to just try and do everything better than him.
Mm hmm.
But the big regret that I have, um, because our relationship was getting better before he passed away,
Mm hmm.
um, was that I did a lot of those things and I rubbed it in his face.
Yeah.
I just said, oh, look at whatever I do, I end up doing it really well. Ha ha ha. You work the same job for 40 years. I just didn't give him the kind of credit that he deserved as an individual beyond just being your dad,
Right.
you know?
Yeah.
And that's sort of a regret that I have about that. But yeah, he was funny. Um, so, like I said, it's just life moves on, and you have to try to use that in a positive way, and think of things, and you know, yeah, I could have done this better, but you know what? I'm not going to let that happen again with my son. I'm not going to let that happen again with other people I have to deal with.
Yeah. That's good, man. I mean, I think all tragedy or all regrets have some kind of lesson in them. And for a long time, I kind of approached these bad things that happen to me as just like bad things. Well, here's another reason that I can feel bad about myself, or here's another reason to hate myself. Here's another reason to drink. And, definitely more recently, I've been able to kind of look at these things that have happened to me in the past and go, okay, but what did I learn from it? And this is
Yeah.
something very basic, something that we weren't taught younger, like it's when we were younger, like it's okay to fail. But I noticed that this is like a message that's being pushed out more and more because of like how many lessons that you can learn from failure, and there's a lot of lessons that you can learn from tragedy if you're willing to take that additional step and be more introspective about what you did wrong. And I think a big quality of a drunk or a person in that kind of addictive mindset is constantly finding reasons why the other person's wrong and what they did wrong, and never really looking at yourself and how you could have done it better. And it doesn't mean to beat yourself up over it or ruminate on it, but like, okay, what did I learn from this bad situation? Instead of obsessing about what the other person did wrong, what can I do better to make sure that that doesn't happen again, or make sure that I don't have to go through that again, or make sure that I protect myself from that kind of situation again? Or how can I become a better person from this? How can I learn from this? And that was a big problem with me. And anytime I relapse or go heavy into drinking again, is that I focus too much on what the other person is doing wrong, even if I'm right. And I am right a
Right.
lot. The other person has done things wrong, but there's nothing I can do and typically speaking, you're never, I mean, you may, but you're never going to force someone to admit they're wrong. It may just be a defeated, okay, I was wrong, I'm sorry. But again, going back to, you have to take your own individual accountability. That person needs to come to grips with what they did wrong on their own.
Right.
And it's not really your responsibility. You've got to focus on you, what you did wrong, what did you learn from it, and how you can be better going forward. Thanks,
Yeah,
Jen.
I just find
Go ahead.
yeah, I just find, you know what, on that note is what I've found as, the approach is that, okay, as clear as it could be that, this person just really shit the bed and this is why this is a disaster. Okay, it's obvious it is, and they're going to probably do everything they can to defend the position, assume it all.
Mm-hmm.
And then you just say, look, this is the way that I see this. You just make your point once
Mm-hmm.
and say, have you looked at your own role in
Mm-hmm.
this? Have
Mm-hmm.
you looked, I think you need to take a look at it and then just try and leave it at that because, you know, at the last, especially if it's a one-to-one, if it's a personal item, what
Mm-hmm.
I've found is, I just say, look at, how would you like it if I did this to you?
Yeah.
You know, and that's very, adolescent. You get taught, do unto others and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes people need a reminder because they get on such a roll of doing whatever they want and justifying it
Mm-hmm.
either out loud in front of others or in their own mind
Mm-hmm.
that they don't get it. And it's just like, and I do borrow some lines from AA. It said, you know what? You need to come to the realization.
I say that too.
Yeah. Come to the realization that what you're doing, look at the outcomes. You can't just continue to blame others because I think honestly, that's where my sister is right now, and some of her the quagmire that she's created. I've talked to you a little bit about it,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm just like, dude, when are you going to look at yourself? When are you going to look at your own skill set and start getting a little bit more realistic about what you're going to do? The
Yeah.
talk is all fun and games, and I'm sure my mom loves it,
Mm-hmm.
but you know, sooner or later, there's going to have to be some kind of application of what you're saying, and you're just putting it off.
Yeah.
And, but I'm not the guy that she needs to hear that from because she's not going to listen. She's going to say, you're a dick. And that's it. And then that's the end
Yeah.
of it.
Yeah. So there's almost no
So,
point, like if you get that initial point across, you may get to them, you may get through to them, you may not. I think that this,
right.
and not going into too much detail, but we've been discussing some issues that you've been having and, some issues that I've been having. And typically speaking, if I have like a huge issue where I have a propensity to kind of insert myself as the villain in a situation, for whatever weird psychological fucked up reason that I have in my head, where I will fucking amp it up to like an 11 and just being an asshole. And it never works. I don't know why the fuck I keep doing it, but I finally came to the realization, going back to what I was saying before, kind of learning as opposed to just reacting. I put myself in these situations where I force myself to become the villain, and it blows up and I end up looking even worse. So it doesn't matter how correct I was. Now I'm just this fucking asshole over here. And it's so much easier to just completely let go and separate yourself from those situations and kind of just let them wallow with whoever else they choose to associate with in that wake of mediocrity. Then kind of put yourself in the mix as the villain and give them a reason to kind of fucking work together against you and give them a stronger bond. Like it's so fucking useless and is so counterproductive. And it's almost like there's so many situations where you're better off just kind of being a ghost,
Just don't get involved.
just don't fucking get involved, Like I said, let them wallow in their own wake of mediocrity. Like it's bullshit. Like they're not doing anything. Like whatever. I don't care. Anyway, it's been really fucking great talking to you, Bill. I think we're going to wrap this one up here. We had some good
Sweet.
numbers, had some good people chatting. I really appreciate you talking to me, man.
Yeah, no problem, brother. Anytime.
Yeah.
We can set it up.
And I want to let everyone know I appreciate you guys coming by. I appreciate the new people stopping by. We will be taking next week off. I'm headed to a well-earned little R&R for Valentine's Day weekend. So I will not be here next weekend or Friday to do the recording. So I hope everyone has a great Valentine's Day. I hope you have a great weekend. Bill, I'm sure we'll chat soon. I'm going to get you these metrics, and we are going to be live on all the major distribution networks for the podcast this weekend. We're going to start publishing these weekly, so we'll have last week's episode with Simon and this week's episode with Bill, and going forward, we'll have all the episodes after this. Bill, again, great having you. I hope to talk to you again soon, sir. Thanks, everybody. You have a great night. All right. Bye-bye.
Be safe.